Hello there. It's time for me to talk about another concert I went to. And actually, this was a concert I forgot I was going to until like 2 days before it happened. So I didn't get to take a day off work. Well, I ended up calling in sick because I was so exhausted after everything was said and done. But I went and saw Against Me and Speedy Ortiz play a strip club next to a larger strip club in a different state on a work night. And there was torrential rains all day. Yay! So I'm pretty spent, but it was a good show. Initially, I was pretty worried because the venue was a small venue, but not a certifiable toilet. Again, it was a strip club, or I should say half a strip club. For whatever reason, they barricaded off half of the venue, but whatever. And it was just weird being in a venue where there were a lot of chairs, multiple bar seating areas, and skee ball. Anyway, for those of you not familiar, Against Me are a punk band that came out of the late 90s, sort of riding the folk punk wave and eventually developing to a more accessible alternative rock style, or at least influenced sound. Now, the consistent theme throughout all of their stylistic changes has been lead singer Laura Jane Grace's biting social commentary. Under the Bush years, this manifested as a lot of anti-military, anti-government sentiments. I mean, they've literally got a song that's chorus is screaming a reference to former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. But in more recent years, as the band have become more accessible, their political identity has shifted more towards personal politics, identity politics, largely stemming from Laura's experiences as a trans woman in the punk scene. These themes ended up coalescing into a high point for the band in the album Transgender Dysphoria Blues, an album that in many ways revitalized interest in the band, as well as establishing a new direction and sense of purpose for them. And so I was glad to see that amongst the older, jaded, beer swelling fans, that there was quite a number of younger attendees who were wearing some sort of LGBT apparel. Laura had actually mentioned on Twitter sometime earlier this year that she got access to Spotify's analytics data, and unfortunately, the band's fan base is still predominantly and overwhelmingly male. But it does seem that their last two records, which have addressed more LGBT issues, have brought in a younger audience, a non-cis, non-male audience. And even then, I'd be curious how many of the men in their fan base are identifying as anything other than straight. I'm actually really quite disappointed that I didn't have any Ace swag to be wearing to this concert. I just sort of threw on this Katamari shirt that my sister got. I was like, fuck it. I've got an Ace patch, but I haven't attached it to my fall jacket yet, and even then that would have been insufferable to wear to this show. It was so hot in there. So, kicking off the show was a solo performer who goes under the moniker Lowercase Roses. And he went up there all by himself, just him, a guitar, and I think he was playing a drum track off of his cell phone for a couple of the songs. He had a really good voice, and his guitar was very, very, muddy and noisy. His guitar looked like it was a custom job. It had a really, odd setup to it. But he really brought some, old school Nirvana vibes, but maybe tempered by some of the singer-songwriter folk punk stuff of the early 2000s. His set finished off with a cover of Rah Rah Riot's cover of Steve Winwood's Valerie, and it was kind of a short set overall. Following him up was Speedy Ortiz, which were a four-piece indie band. Yeah, we'll settle with that. They kind of had a little bit of like a Pavement vibe, but occasionally their songs would feature some interesting like not just tempo changes, but time signature switch ups. And so they were super cool. Their lead singer was really really feminine, and it was very funny because she committed like over the top to it. She had pink guitar, pink skirt on, uh, pink socks, pink shoes, like everything was pink. But at the same time, they were bringing a couple of like pretty blistering tracks on there. I looked up a couple of their songs afterwards and was disappointed that they suffer from the usual problem I have with indie rock, which is that live there's just so much more of a dynamic range between the loudest stuff and the softest stuff. So when I looked them up online, a lot of their songs felt a little ho-hum, little uneventful instrumentally, which was sad because live they really did bring some real power to these tracks. Their singer also mentioned that the bathroom at the concert tonight was unisex. Anyone could use it, no matter their gender. And that there was homophobic wall scrollings in there. And she encouraged members of the audience to go deal with that in whatever means they felt appropriate. Which felt nice because, you know, in this strip club kind of biker bar-esque place, that a whole crowd is like taking up arms against homophobia like that. It was nice. And finally, there was Against Me. The first big thing that struck me about their set list is that they've got a lot of albums at this point and a lot of material I wasn't terribly familiar with. I'm kind of a basic bitch and really love their albums New Wave, Searching for Former Clarity, and Transgender Dysphoria Blues, and really haven't given too much of a chance to the rest of their stuff. But since their discography really has these three acts to it, folk punk, mainstream alternative, and sort of poppier gender identity stuff, they brought a lot of variety to their set list, which you don't tend to get out of a lot of punk acts, I feel like. And for the encore, Laura came out by herself at first with just an acoustic guitar and sung a couple of numbers just on that, including stuff that she apparently had just been writing recently and hadn't been performed live ever. So after this like rollicking, thrashing fucking punk set, things, you know, got low key for a little bit, and she was very vulnerable up there all alone. And they finished off with a couple of full band tracks before leaving the stage for the night. But what was kind of disappointing was that since a lot of the audience were people my age and older, you know, mid to late 20s and up, we didn't exactly have like the energy necessary to keep going for an hour and a half long, like hype as hell set. Even my buddy Austin, who's kind of this like windmill of a human being, was showing signs of tiredness when he was in the pit, which I have never witnessed before. I mean, they went fucking hard. And people did save their energy for some of the more hype tracks, such as Thrash Unreal or Pints of Guinness Make You Stronger. Other little complaints are I felt like Laura's vocals were not mixed high enough, and I had a much easier time hearing the other members do their backing vocals than her at some points. And also it's kind of hard to do the lead up to an encore in a small venue because everyone can see the guitar tech readying stuff for another couple of songs. I mean, we all know they're gonna do an encore unless they really fucking hate the audience. But, like, it was obvious. It was obvious. He's right there plugging it back in. We can all see him doing it. You're fooling no one. I also have some thoughts on the personnel. present for this lineup. So Against Me pretty much are always going to be Laura Jane Grace on vocals and guitars, and James Bowman on guitar as well. Those are the two core members that have remained consistent from the band's inception. But they managed to bring back longtime bassist Andrew Seward, who was really, really into it. Like, he was visibly singing along to so many of the songs. He kept trying to touch the ceiling with his bass when there were parts where he didn't have much to play. So it was cool to see him back in the mix of things. Now, for the last 5 years, Against Me have managed to hold down Adam Willard as a drummer, which has continued to surprise me because Adam Willard has played on like everything and been in so many different bands that the fact that they've held him down this long is shocking to me. He started life, not life. He started his career in the music scene playing for Rockets for the Crypt. Eventually, he would join up with Angels and Airwaves, The Offspring, and countless others for just, session work. And it's interesting for me to see him really committing down to this band that are playing smaller venues that in some ways are kind of past their peak but have like this crazy cult following. Because at this point, he is dad levels of old and several years older than the rest of Against Me. But in a lot of interviews, it seems like him and Laura have like this really good rapport going on. They seem like super chummy. So, I guess it's cool that he's found a home, at least for a little bit here. Rhythmic vagrant that he is. Oh, and they covered the Mountain Goats at one point. I forget that Against Me, that Laura really likes to cover songs. So that was like, oh, okay. She did Going to Georgia, which, now that I'm thinking about it, in many ways is a precursor to a lot of the sounds that Against Me would be doing in the late 90s as far as folk punk. Though I will say, like, any recording I've seen of either the Mountain Goats playing the song or Laura covering the song have been better quality than the actual studio version of that track. It is, it's bad. It's badly recorded and badly performed. God. Is that folk authenticity? Is that what it is? We have to have it sound like crap so that you can go home and do it better. I don't know, but they bring a nice ethos to that song, and it works with Against Me's whole, I guess you could call it their rags to riches stories coming out of South Florida, full of hate and spite, and going elsewhere. They've dedicated a good number of songs in their discography to how much they hate Florida, and Going to Georgia is about crossing the Florida-Georgia line, and all that entails. Got a busted ass Colt 45. Anyway, the concert was pretty good. I had a fun time, and that's, I guess, my statements on everything here. Hope I didn't forget anything. Anyway, thanks again for listening to my little experiences here, and ciao.